Hello, I'm David Eichholtz with David Richard Gallery, located in New York City, and today I'm with Andrew Spence, a New York-based artist since 1977, originally from California.
Originally started in California, yeah.
So today we're standing in the exhibition in front of a couple of the works that are his first solo show with our gallery. And actually, this is your first solo show in New York for a while, hadn't it been?
It's been a little while. I had a show at 50, I guess it was Art at West 57th Street, Art.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah. They're 57th.
But that's probably been 8 years, maybe.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, because I think they've been. I don't know if they're closed or not. You're doing sort of privately or whatever.
Big on the internet, on Instagram.
So with this show, though, there's also a lot of other sort of firsts in this show. In particular, the show is called Looking Back and Moving Forward. Looking Back and Moving Forward. And it's a very specific show that Andrew curated around 5 paintings. They're now considered paintings as they're completed, but they were actually silkscreen photo prints on canvas. And then and this is one of them here. In fact, this is the first one called Blue Cameo. And what Andrew did was, and this was actually in 1998. And that was the first one. I mean, they were printed in 1998, and then he really just finished the suite of 5 in the past year, in 2021. So that's why this was perfect timing to do this show, to present this. And then what we're presenting with the show, with these 5, is where he derived some of this additional imagery that is layered on top of the screen print. So the screen print is essentially the ground, and they were all the same dimension when they were printed.
Yes.
And so the scale is all the same, but as you will notice as you look on the website or meander through this talk with us, they vary quite a bit, both in terms of the color and also in terms of the imagery that's layered on top, but also the final dimensions vary substantially. And this is this one and another one, Wildlife, are the 2 largest, and the rest of them are smaller. So that's sort of the backdrop of what is in this show. And there's 12 works or 13 works in the show, and I just want to set that up as a basis, because it also not only is the aesthetic and visual aspect of the show, but it also becomes the fodder for the discussion and how that came about. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
And I think we met online, actually. I came across a show you were in recently at the Resnick Foundation.
Correct.
But I found you even before that. I forget now how I encountered you. But anyway, we were trying to meet over 2 years ago, and then COVID came along.
Right.
And nobody wanted to meet or do anything, and then we've kind of, I think it was the Resnick show. Then I got back to you because I saw that show, and I contacted you and I said, I hope you remember me. And so anyway, we kind of reconnected finally this fall when everybody felt a little bit more comfortable going out and about. So let's talk a little bit about I think it's kind of interesting because your work embraces a lot of art history, and you taught at Bennington for years, and one of your students was just recently in who sort of wanted to do more in art history, and you sort of helped him with that, and as his thesis and work, and in terms of the art history program there at Bennington. But I think what's fascinating is, we all think of Andy Warhol as sort of only sort of reproduction and what have you, but he was very much painting and about painting. And that was actually sort of your Warholian moment in your career when you decided to do these screen prints. And I just like for you to elaborate on that, because I think it's very important, because it not only was the foundation of this work, but I think it started informing a lot of other things about your work. And it's certainly now what you've been doing since you've left Bennington and are now full-time back in New York at your studio. It seems to have informed how you're approaching work a lot today. is my impression. But
No, it's true. Are you going to talk about that?
yeah, so
Okay.
I thought it's fascinating that you came up with this idea after just doing painting all the time, and I thought it was fascinating. So
I basically, getting back to the origins of the photo silkscreen, I wanted to make a series of prints, thinking what would I do over a long period of time if I took one print and then painted. I wanted to paint on top of them. I didn't know what it was going to be or what it was going to look like, but it was basically what I wanted to do. And so if I spread it out, like I made this one right after the prints were done, and then I made another one maybe like 2 or 3 years later, and just if they were going to be, I didn't want them to be all the same, so they all went through different experiences. The thing about it is, getting back to the image of this is a painting, this is a print of an image of a painting called Cover Up that I had made and is now in some private collection. And the Cover Up, you can see that it's a 35 millimeter slide. So this was before digital technology was very common. And
nowadays we say it's old school, but
old school. This is old school. It's all old school.
Pre-digital.
You can't keep up with it. But at any rate, so you can sort of see the shadow in the painting, in the slide. And the painting itself was probably about 8 feet high, and maybe
the original painting.
The original painting, and much wider. So this is a reduction in that sense. But basically, all the dust and all the shadows and all the imperfections become part of it, and I really like that. It is in that sense. It's the nature of photo silkscreens, and Warhol did a lot of that, and was sort of had probably the same experience. I mean, there were a lot of smudges and dirt and stuff on it, but that becomes part of the composition.
Because the photography picks everything up.
Yes.
You can't hide anything.
Yeah. I mean, you could Photoshop all that and get rid of it, but the point is that that's all. To me, it's just basically as an abstraction. I mean, it's a painting. I know where it comes from. I picked it because I like the cross out. It's like an M. M is for mistake, and then crosses the other way. But it creates a very nice pattern to paint on. So, or to do something with. The trouble with it, it needs something. Because it's too flat and just sort of, I think, really kind of one-dimensional. And that's
intentionally graphic.
Yeah, I'd wanted to get. I just wanted to use it as a ground to work with, and I find this goes in sort of. I find it really interesting about looking at artwork and the interference that one experience looking at it, especially in a museum. If somebody's walking across, you're looking, and they walk in front of you, and they become kind of part of the experience. And I actually took a photograph of a Donald Judd sculpture at MoMA, and somebody walked right in front of the camera as I took it, and I actually liked it better. I thought it sort of it gave it a kind of a dimension that wasn't there. Right. And it made the sculpture look really interesting, I thought. It gave scale, it did all these funny things. The woman was blurred, so it was like a kind of movement against something still. And so I like the idea of superimposing one thing on top of another thing.
It's almost like Richter meets Donald Judd.
Yeah, I mean, I can see paintings, and I say, God, I'd love to paint on that. And like my studio is in Bushwick right now, and the graffiti all over the place, changes probably every 2 or 3 months or something. Yeah. And it's to me, it's just part of the environment. And so to have something, put something on top of something else, it's just totally natural to me.
But you had also, had you started doing some of you did 3 different print series. Was this before?
This was after,
sort of-
actually. It was. I had done aquatints with one place. I sort of did that with Parasol Press, and then I was doing like these woodcut type prints with Pace Editions.
And that's the vanity that we'll get to.
Yeah, that's the vanity.
Yeah.
And then I was doing some prints with Garner Tullis workshop in Santa Barbara, that monoprints. He had a huge, he could make giant monoprints. I mean, they weren't little, they were as big as this.
Mm-hmm.
The paper was like rolled out flat, and he had some kind of a printing press that used to paint decals on airplane wings or something. And it was a huge flatbed.
Yeah.
And anyway, so you could do pretty much anything with that. And so, but it was all about layering and step by step. It was like first you make one even the process of printmaking is making that print. The white's actually printed. This is white ink here. It's printed. It's not the paper.
Right.
So, but in processing it, printing this, it was all about registration and putting one thing down and then putting the next thing down and then the next thing. Nothing is going exactly over each other. I mean, like it's basically three shapes: the black, the red, and the white.
Yeah. 3 screens.
Yeah, 3 screens. And so, but I also made a painting earlier on like that.
And that one's called Duplex 2.
That's Duplex 2.
And the original painting was the same imagery, but called Duplex, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's why that's 2, because the first one was a big oil painting, oil and canvas, and I don't know what happened to it. It just sort of vanished.
Oh, well, that's too bad. Well,
No, I mean,
you have a reproduction of it here.
yeah, I think I have a slide.
An edition of 10.
I might have a 35 millimeter slide. It was a long time ago. I may have been.
But this is something you really liked, I mean, from a while ago, because it's not an exact replication here, but you basically have taken this concept of what looks like 4 windows.
Yes, they
That was
are
your
windows.
first thing that you painted on top of this
Right.
series.
And so it comes from the duplex. Actually, around the corner. There's a photograph of a house called Cape
Yes.
Breton in the show, and I painted these on top of that. But actually, that's where the idea came from, because that underneath are these black holes where the windows and the doors is. And so I kind of like this format because it's sort of symmetrical and not symmetrical at the same time. It's symmetrical enough. You know, you got 2 over 2,
Right.
but they're all different. They're all sort of spaced differently. And that was kind of the fun part, was trying to figure out how to line that up to that, and then where does this go? And so it's just kind of a composition. And so I used it over and over again, and I kind of I was just noticing this isn't as there's a subtle shifts in it, and so that's I've used this format on into other things,
Right.
other paintings.
And that's the thing is, it's there's a dynamic aspect of doing this, even though they're sort of reductive, straightforward forms, but the multiplication of them both in the ground and the obfuscation of that with this overlay and these not being 100% uniform, it creates a randomness with some sort of aspect of symmetry and replication that sort of hints at minimalism, but not. And so there the reproduction by a third party of the screen prints, but then you had the hand overlay of the hand painted.
Right.
So it keeps it reductive and sort of clean, but yet there's they're dynamic and there's a complexity in all of these.
There's
There's also a lot of illusory aspects because what seems to be happening over time is more painterly sort of aspects.
It's getting
get
much
layered,
more painterly now.
and more depth comes with it.
Yes.
Through both color and other things, is more dimensionality.
The trouble with the minimal, getting too minimal, the work becomes too flat for me spatially.
Right.
And so I like having this. It prevents that. I mean, the painting I did that is called Duplex was basically too flat. I think that's probably was part of the problem with it, and I couldn't figure out how to give it more presence or more by dimension, by adding this more paint. This is very thick paint. This is a very thin canvas. You
Right.
can see the weave of the canvas.
So
There's a space, there's a whole sort of space thing, whereas the white shapes are way out and float way in front of that black shape. And and it always looks that way. After all these years, it still does that. And that's always been really important for me to have that. I don't think of myself, I mean, I love minimal art. John McLaughlin is one of my heroes, but at the same time, I think it was a real sort of struggle with all that, the flatness, and not all of the McLaughlins. Well, for me anyway, I like the earlier ones. The oil paint. I like to see the funny thing with McLaughlin. Nick Welder pointed it out. He paints all the lines go the same direction. I've never really looked at it that carefully, but and it was just all part about the Zen processes of his way of working. He wanted to take the ego out of the painting, so he was painting like a machine in a sense. I don't really buy into that so much because I always can look at his work and I can see the thinking process that he's going through, and that's the part I like, and that's what I find interesting about these. But I like there's not a I mean, this is oil paint. It's got all the texture in this white. It doesn't really show up. Maybe.
Yeah, from a distance,
in person,
images
you
look
see it.
very graphic and flat. But when you're seeing it in person, there's a lot of brush detail
and there's not there's marks. I don't use masking tape. It's just hand painted. So that's what I like. The something it's when it gets to a point where I can say it's good enough, then I'm happy with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not interested in what is it, fetish finish, or
right. Even though that was sort of your California background with surface and
I'm
monochromes
very interested. I mean, I know a lot about all that stuff. I'm very aware of that, living in.
And that was sort of your background pre-1977 before moving here.
In Los
and
Angeles.
as you said, working with Nick Wilder in his gallery.
Yeah.
And then when you moved here, your work, you started thinking about objects, and so were more representational or recognizable sort of elements, but you sort of put a twist on everything.
Right.
And that's kind of what we'll get to. I think what we'll do is move to. I think I want to save this for last.
Okay.
Because this is probably the most complex, these two over here that I'm pointing to. And I think what we ought to do is possibly move to this next corner and look at these other two three that are in this suite. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll take a pause here and reposition the camera and start up again.
Perfect.